You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next, the July 12th meeting of the Michigan City Board of Zoning Appeals. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, July 12th. It's 6:05, and this is the regular meeting of the Michigan City Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. York, would you do the roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mr. Klender?
Here.
Ms. Stransky?
Here.
Ms. Vance?
Here.
Mr. Zimmer?
Here.
Attorney Hill?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the meeting in April 12th. Everybody has a copy of those, and I assume had a chance to review it. If there's no changes, I'll take a motion to approve. Yes.
So moved.
I just want to let you know that there's a misspelling on the name that online. I think that's 10. It has Beach as my last name.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we got
Yeah.
Vance.
We'll correct that. Thank you.
Is that the only one you saw, Ted?
Yes, that's the only one.
Okay. Yeah, they got you right in there. Okay.
Okay, with that correction made, then, is there a motion to approve?
Yes, there's a motion to approve the minutes as revised.
I think there's already a motion, right? There was a second. Wasn't there? Yeah.
You just need a second.
Yeah, second.
Call for the vote. Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Klender?
Yes.
Ms. Stransky?
Abstain.
Ms. Vance?
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer?
Yes.
Motion approved.
So we have one petition this evening, B-100-22. Who is going to introduce this evening?
So this is a petition for Mr. William and Susan Wells requesting a development standard variance for a rear setback for existing ground level deck and relief from R1E setback for a second story deck. And they'll be represented, I believe Mr. Wells will be representing himself tonight. So the floor is yours. Just tell us a little about the project, what you're doing. Just kind of give them an overview of what's going on.
Sure.
State your name and address.
My name is William Wales, Bill Wales. This is my wife, Sue, and we own a home at 1226 Lakeshore Drive. And I apologize for being the reason you folks had to take up your good summer night here and be here with me because of my missteps or whatever. In any event, we purchased the home at 1226 Lakeshore about 2 years ago. It's a 32-year-old home on the lakeside of the Lakeshore Drive that sits back from the neighbors to the west, 20, 30 feet. To the east is a 50-foot right-of-way, and which is wooded, and there are some larger beach walk style homes down that way with 3 or 4 story decks, and can't really see my home. The homes across the street are all beach walk homes, and they can see the top of my roof, but they're so elevated. That's their line of sight. The home was it's small and it's set back and it needed a lot of work. We decided to replace the decking on the first floor, which was 31 years old. And at the same time, we decided to construct using the same posts and the same footprint, a a second-story deck that also serves, I guess, as a roof for the first-story deck. So it's the same footprint. It's mimics the first floor deck, which was 31 years old. By the way, there was an existing second floor deck, but it was very small and in the corner off the bedroom. So we're basically extending that out. And so that's essentially the scope of the project, is to, for purposes of seeing the lake better, because that's one of the reasons you purchase a home on that side of Lakeshore Drive. For our family, by the way, we have soon to be 10 grandchildren, and this is going to be our forever family home as I approach retirement here at the end of the year. And we're not VBR, Verbo, or Airbnb people. We use this as our family home, and we're trying to make it nice for ourselves and our family. So we wanted a better view of the lake. We did not encroach 1 inch over what was currently built 31 years ago. And that's essentially the scope of the project. I have the support of all of my neighbors, at least 2 doors each way, east, west, behind me. They wrote letters. Frankly, I think the property, you've seen the pictures, kind of mimics the style in that area of Lakeshore. I think it enhances if you look at the property, I think we've enhanced the overall value and the value of our neighbors' properties in that area. And there's no way we encroach upon anybody's line of sight, access to the lake. We set back, and no one can even see this deck from their home. So I don't think, if you read the statute 1603, I don't think we in any way, I forget the exact wording though, it's we don't interfere with the water views, and there's no detriment to this health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public because of this project. And as I said, I think it does match well the look of all the existing properties along Lakeshore Drive there, and contributes to the overall atmosphere and property value for that neighborhood. In any event, that's essentially my remarks. I'd be happy to respond to any questions or further explain any detail. But with that, we'll turn it over to the board.
Yes, please.
How deep is the deck, or how wide is the deck? Is it approximately 15 feet? That's what I kind of estimated it at.
I think it actually sits back 2 or 3 feet from the lot line. And I think it's 12 feet.
12 feet. Okay.
12 feet, yeah.
I just needed it to clarify.
Yeah, it's
I couldn't, I saw the plat. You had a plat in
If
here.
you look at the architect's
you for doing
drawings,
that.
they were just built off the existing deck.
I just couldn't see measurements, and I was just kind of guesstimating using a ruler. I was like, okay,
It's not a real wide deck, and I don't understand. I'm told from historically, like I said, we bought the property 2 years ago, that there was another home in front of that home at one time. And for that reason, it was constructed the way it was. I have no idea. I've only been, we've been coming to Michigan City for almost 20 years, but purchased a home 2 years ago.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it says on the drawings that it's 12 feet 4 inches.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
That's what I was guesstimating or assuming. Yes.
It's not a large deck as far as decks go, but for our purposes, it works well.
Skylar, maybe you could explain why do they need a variance?
Okay, so I was going to say, let me explain this. So, first of all, you had this been built at had the house sit at 20 feet for the setback, it's kind of confusing in the way that we're doing this. The house, so say we're building this house nowadays, you would build this house, you'd have a 20-foot setback in your rear backyard, right? Then you would be allowed to build into that rear setback a deck at 10 feet, which leaves you another 10 feet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So right now we're sitting at approximately.
Well, it looks like it's right on the property line.
Yeah. So that's essentially where we're at. It's really not a matter of
So it's non-conforming.
It's non-conforming. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, keep in mind, he built this back. We're dealing with a historic deck that had been there for 40 years. Let's say 40 years. It's been there a long time. Okay. And so even 30 years. It just wouldn't have been allowed. Like, you can repair it and things like that. It's just more or less, it's non-conforming. You can expand it, Yeah. So hence the second story comes in, they're building another 10-foot out onto that. So that's kind of where we're at. If we were building a house nowadays, you'd set it back at 20. If you had the space, you'd set it at 20, and then you'd be able to build 10 in to your setback, and you would be perfectly fine. Right. Hence why I think that Mr. Knight completed this. He put the R1E, and he was like, I think that's what his mention was with the R1E is the 20-foot setback. He was acknowledging that this house isn't at 20 feet. It would only really be able to be built into whatever that allowed distance would be, which would be much less than probably 12 at this point. So,
Okay, thank you.
so that, I don't know that answer help clarify why we're here tonight, and I'll kind of address that in my report to some extent.
Mr. Zimmer, can I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
For Mr. Wales and for Mr. York. So just to clarify this for not only us, but the public, this is not getting any bigger. It is not encroaching on any other property other than his own. And all he's really doing is just going up, correct?
Correct.
In other words,
Yeah.
putting a roof over the,
I would say that he's repairing the existing and then expanding with respect to, it's basically just going to be a deck over top of the existing deck. So he's repairing what's below and building up top, expanding out, if you will. So yes, and it's not going over property. Me and him talked about the property line. I was like, does it go over the property line? And it doesn't go over the property line. It is in the exact footprint of what was there. It does mimic the other houses around it. If you look at them, they pretty much all have double decks. And it's because so they can, it goes out flat and then you've got a dune. So it's to get up over top of that. And probably the other deck serves more of a purpose of enjoying the lower area because there is a grassed area that's camped in front of it. So.
And just to point out, the project involved the structure from the existing 31-year-old deck was used. All we did for the first floor deck was redeck it. So all of the 2x8s, 2x10s, same posts, no construction was done on the first floor deck. It was just putting timber tech down where it had been rotted wood.
So essentially, if you look at it a different way, sorry, just to state this, we're allowing him to expand an existing nonconformity up with respect to like literally adding on a top deck. He would be able to repair his deck had he not added on. We would let him repair his deck. We're not going to let him fall down and people fall through it. That's not what the building department would do. So,
And the first floor deck is 2 feet off the ground or something like that. So it's not much of a elevation. So we've let people do that.
Yeah, real quick. It's noted that the work was started without a permit. Work was already started. And they're coming and requesting that now. Is there an explanation for that?
I think the thinking was that because we were mimicking the footprint and there was no further encroachment, no permit was needed. Now, I'm not here to tell you that the contractor did not pull the permit. I'm not that conversant with these kinds of things, but on the other hand, I take full responsibility for it. So it's my fault, my mistake, and I bear the consequences of it.
and I'm told that you have pulled a permit for the interior
Yes.
now.
Yes, we
So he can go ahead, but he's waiting for the outcome tonight to pull the exterior.
We've not driven a nail since May 4th on the deck.
And that was confirmed today by our building commissioner. The deck is not, it's been stayed just like when she went over there the first time.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines, been on the commission here for a number of years, and this isn't the first time we've heard people coming and asking for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. And I think we've been very lenient as far as my recollection is. And I think it's something that we ought to consider. We ought to tighten up our tolerances here a little bit. Nothing against the whales here, but it's something that we can't let get out of hand just for conversation's sake.
Skylar, why don't you give your report?
Absolutely.
And
Thank
then we'll see if there's any further discussion.
Yes, let me give my report. So this is a report for 1226 Lakeshore Drive. It's the Wells property. I didn't have any comments from any of the departments. It just didn't affect their, it wasn't applicable to what they're reviewing. So the planning department, the petitioner is requesting a development standard variance to allow for a 2-story deck to be reconstructed at the home to replace a single-story existing deck that exceeds the allowable setback distance. If you go to our zoning ordinance for the required setbacks, in 16.06, porches, decks, and patios, specifically subsection C and E. C says rear yards, specific to rear yards, decks, open, unenclosed, uncovered porches, patios, and terraces may project into a required rear yard setback for a distance not exceeding 10 feet. E, second story decks, so specific to second story decks, including any walkway connecting the second story deck to a first story deck, ground level deck, or a deck located above a walkout basement may extend into the rear yard setback, provided it does not extend more than 10 feet from the rear of the dwelling. R1E required setbacks are 20 feet, which this is zoned R1E, by the way. Requested to construct a 2-story deck within the required setback area of the R1E zoning district. Comments. Essentially, the issue is that the home has been constructed at approximately, I'm estimating about 15 feet from rear yard line rather than 20. The petitioner is asking for relief to construct a deck that will exceed beyond the allowable 10 feet into a rear setback. The deck will replace an existing single-story deck and will go in the exact footprint of the existing deck. And from our discussion just recently, it's a little deceiving in my statements here that the existing deck has been repaired. It's not been removed. It's been repaired. So it's still there. The standards below are the standards for development standard variance are found in zoning code section 2811 subsection B and are set out below in italics with the department's proposed findings. The approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The proposed improvements will be built per all applicable codes and ordinances required by the building commissioner to assure the safe construction of the 2-story deck. All rules and regulations are required to be followed, and plans will need to be submitted and reviewed by the building commissioner. Number 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property will not be affected in any substantial adverse manner. The proposed deck and second-story deck will maintain the current character of the surrounding homes and will not negatively affect the value of the surrounding properties or general vicinity. Number 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. Practical difficulties shall result from exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property that do not generally apply to other properties in the same zoning district. The variance shall be necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right, similar to that possessed by other property owners in the same zoning district. The home in question was built prior to the existing zoning code. The strict application of the zoning code will only allow for a very small deck to be constructed to meet the current setback requirements. Allowing the homeowner to construct a 2-story deck back within the existing footprint of the original deck will maintain a substantial property right and is similar in character and use to the adjacent homes and homes with similar decks. Recommendation. The staff recommends approval of B-100-22 with the following condition. No improvements can extend past the rear lot line into the identified platted Esplanade area.
Thank you, Mr. York. Mr. Hale?
Yes, sir. I have a report on petition B-100-22. The petitioners and property owners are William and Suzanne Wales. They are requesting in the petition development standards variances for property at 1226 Lakeshore Drive, Michigan City, Indiana. I would initially note for this body that although it's required, I was very happy to see that the petitioner submitted the notice documentation early so that I would have an opportunity to review it. Because our new documentation is new, I would just add a comment at this point that's not relevant to the petition. These 300-foot notices get voluminous, and it's extremely helpful because I do take my time to go over them and compare if there's a map or find my own map if there isn't, and try and check everything out. So I was very pleased that this was submitted early. And with that, I would just note that I've had an opportunity then to review all of the notice documentation. It's in order. All of our requirements have been met by the petitioner, and you're free to consider this matter. Next, I would report to you that the record in this case includes the very sufficient materials submitted by the petitioner in a very easy to understand format. And they include instructions for the filing of the petition, the Michigan City Board of Zoning Appeals amended petition, 6 letters in support of petitioner's request, 9 photographs of the petitioner's home and adjacent homes, petitioner's proposed preliminary finding in order, acknowledgement of public hearing notice requirements, copy of notice of public hearing used by the petitioners, a beacon overhead of the property, a site plan of 1 page prepared by Heidi Hornaday, an architect, a photograph of the petitioner's home prior to work stoppage, the photograph dated 5/3/22, 4 pages of floor plans also prepared by architect Heidi Hornaday, a written description of the project, a second proposed copy of development standards variance, proposed findings and order prepared by the petitioners, a copy of section 403 and 404 of our Michigan City zoning code, a list of the surrounding property owners, and a second beacon overhead of the property showing the surrounding properties. In addition, the petitioner has submitted, as I mentioned, extensive notice documentation, and that is part of the record as well. I've asked Mr. York to include as part of the records, and I would like him to read into the record remonstrances that were submitted. They also comprise part of the record. I'm aware of 6 remonstrances supporting the petitioner because he attached them to his application, his petition. I believe there's another one. I would like both of them, because the 6 are all the same. You can read it once and then just indicate the names of the people who submitted those, and he should read the other remonstrance in full. The record also includes the planning department report, this report, and the testimony supplied by Mr. Wales. I can't really add much to what Mr. York has described for you. This is a matter of setbacks. You've heard it. He has addressed, as well as Mr. Wales has addressed, the issue that I mentioned in my report regarding identifying the location of the property line. I think you're familiar with what this project is. He's going to have a second floor deck So the first floor will have a roof over it. And Mr. York in his report also indicated to you that the standards that you are to consider are the same standards that we always use in development standards variances. They're found at section 2811 subsection B. They're included in my report in verbatim. They're included in Mr. York's report together with his findings. And you're free then, under our zoning ordinance, to grant this request or partially grant it or grant it with limitations, which you must include in any motion. You could grant the request, but subject to certain conditions, which also must be included in any motion. You could deny the request, or you could table it until a future meeting. That's the extent of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hale. Now, is there any discussion regarding this petition amongst the board members?
Mr. President, would you like for me to read your remonstrances or the remonstrances?
Read one of them.
Okay, yes, absolutely. Before, just to go ahead and get it into the record, the Board of Zoning Appeals, 100 East Michigan Boulevard, Suite 2, Michigan City, Indiana, 46360. To whom it may concern, I am Carl Hamage, I think is his name, Hamage, owner of 1306 Lakeshore Drive, and neighbor to Bill and Sue Wells at 1226 Lakeshore Drive, Michigan City, Indiana. I wholly support their remodel design and hope you approve same. The design does not adversely affect my home, my views, my use or enjoyment of my property. Just the opposite. It has and will clean up and excuse me, and improve an old house. Many in our block have similar covered lower decks and upper decks. This is a nice improvement and will likely improve the neighborhood and its property values. Thank you. Please vote in favor of this improvement and requested variances. Same letter from 1302 Lakeshore Drive, Miss Mary Noonan. Mr. Stephen Feiger, 1224 Lakeshore Drive. Mary Calendra at 1218 Lakeshore Drive. Henry Bendis at 1214 Lakeshore Drive. Catherine Niddleton at 1225 Lakeshore Drive. And then Miss Noonan sent in another letter dated 6/22/22, Michigan City Zoning Board. I'm writing this letter to support Mr. William and Susan Wells deck variance. I live in the house immediately east of their property at 1302 Lakeshore Drive. I have no issues with their new deck. In fact, I think it looks very nice. Sincerely, Mary Noonan, 1302 Lakeshore Drive, Michigan City, Indiana.
Any discussion?
Can I mention one more thing, Mr. President?
Yes.
I would just, you mentioned Heidi Hornaday when Sue and I decided to repair the deck and build a second floor deck. We retained who people told us in Michigan City was one of the best architects around to do the design, keeping it within the same footprint. And just so you know, the quality of the design is something that meets all the codes. And she put it together for approval by the Planning Commission. Unfortunately, the contractor or myself did not submit it. But it is a quality design, and the construction's the same.
Did she coach you at all that you would need to get a variance for this?
She was shocked that we did. Well, she didn't know that we didn't have a building permit, but she was not. She didn't. Yes, she was shocked actually. When I called her, she was.
The question was more, did she coach you though on it?
No,
Because she's the one who should have known better that you would need a variance for this.
No, she didn't say that. She was chagrined, but she didn't say that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah, you've been kind of a little late two times on getting permission to do things. So we're going to trust that if you do any further work, you're going to come here first.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Count on it.
At this point, I'll open it up to public. Is there any public comment regarding this petition? I don't know if we have anybody watching. Doesn't look like it.
Callie.
Okay. There's no other public here. So public comment period is closed. If there's no further discussion, then I would accept a motion regarding this petition.
Yes, I make a motion that we approve petition B 100-22 for variance as indicated with the recommendations from the planning department as noted on their report that no improvements can extend past the rear lot line into the identified plat Esplanade area.
I would just like confirmation that the intent is that that's a condition.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we'll call for the vote. Excuse me. Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Klender,
Yes.
Ms. Stransky,
Yes.
Ms. Vance,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmer.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you for coming before us and good luck on finishing the project now.
Thank you for your consideration. I apologize for having to do this with you folks, but I do appreciate the professional way in which Mr. York has handled this. First time I've ever met him, really. I saw him in the hallway once, but I do appreciate the professional manner in which the city of Michigan City has handled it. I'm a lawyer, so I appreciate these things.
Thank you.
And I do obey the law most of the time.
Beautiful. It looks very, very nice.
It is a nice improvement.
Yes.
I will admit that.
We're very proud. It's our forever house. So
It's a very nice house.
Fight for a beer or something.
Don't tempt these guys.
We gotta find the apartment.
Yeah. Let me get back to you on that.
Oh, wait, you have a comment? Do we need to read that?
Should we wait till the end now?
Why don't you, yes, we're gonna have to. We
Okay.
had a vote. And it's been
Yeah.
decided.
I don't think it's pertinent.
Wait for the. public.
Yeah. Let's get through this. Any old or new business?
The only new business I have I don't have any old business right now. The new business I will say is that I do have two new staff members coming on. I'm very excited, as you can tell. One of them has started Monday. Another one will start next Monday. At that point in time, you'll see me with BZA, you'll probably keep seeing me a little bit more, but eventually I'll hand it off to basically an assistant or a deputy. Their name is Sylvia Collins. She'll be sitting in for representing the planning department and being your staff. I think you'll find her very pleasant, and I hope you like her. So, anyways, yeah, I think you will. Other than that, it's just been a lot of work. So I'm glad to have some new staff coming on. So it's been nice.
Thank you, Mr. York. So now we'll open it up to public comment. What public comment did we have? Is it gone now? Okay.
I think we lost. Yes. Can you hear me?
Colleen, are you there? Yeah, it's public comment time. You can actually make your comment publicly if you like.
Oh, I was just wondering, we're at 1205 Lakeshore, and we were just wondering about the house on the corner there at step 7, if what is going on with that. It's such an eyesore. Do you- I think it's 1200 Lakeshore Drive, maybe. I think it's Lewison's or Levinson's. There's a sign. It's right on the boardwalk to the beach.
And I know what house you're referring to.
There's
So-
kids going in and out drinking.
Yeah, we'll have to address that through the code enforcement.
Uh-huh.
So I'll give it to our building commissioner.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, so people are aware, I mean, you all are aware of that situation there is, I mean, it's.
We've
there's so many-
dealt with it. We've dealt with it numerous times, so we'll just have to deal with it again.
Oh, okay. Because we've been there a couple of years and it doesn't seem like anything's ever, I mean, there's.
So this is the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yeah,
pretty-
okay.
okay.
Yeah, I know. We got the letter and I was like, we have nothing to do with, actually theirs, but we just wanted to sit in and see what was going on. But okay, I just thought I'd bring it to your attention, but thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
Connie.
Have a good night.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, public comment is closed. If there's no further discussion about anything, we are adjourned until August 9th.